Oh, I can see us. We're both centered very nicely.
Yeah. Go figure. So I'm Jack Howell. I'm here with my friend John Weigand and of Baltimore Symphony, West Virginia University. And we did an interview a couple months ago. And I said at the time of the interview that I could do 4 or 5 videos very easily with John. We could do mouthpieces, we could do war stories, we could do one on reeds. And somebody in the comment section, do you remember who that was? It was a former student.
Patrick Maples.
Yeah. Commented and said, do a reed video with him. He's the master. So here we are, asked and answered.
Thank you, Jack. It's always fun. I don't know if I'm the master, but I have a simple procedure here that I've taught to college students for decades and done many talks on the road at other universities. There's no magic tricks or anything, but I think it's really helpful to have a system that's pretty step by step rather than just haphazardly doing something and then doing something a little bit. So let me go down the line here.
We're just playing and throwing in the trash.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it doesn't play.
My system.
This is all you need here. We don't need a mouthpiece cap. First of all, obviously a reed case. I'm a big fan of some kind of a reed case with humidification. For those of us that have cold winters, I think it's essential. This one is by Bad Brain and Brad Behn. I hope you can edit that. This one is by...
Oh, why would I?
Not Bad Brain. I've just heard that before.
Hi, Bad.
This reed case is by Brad Behn, and it holds 10 reeds, and it has a little humidity packet inside here, which I think is ingenious. You'll need a standard clipper, that's a Cordier, a reed knife. If you haven't used a reed knife before, another alternative is a Reed Geek. The Reed Geek is really good for beginner reed people, and I even use it sometimes. It has an advantage in that you can take it on airplanes, no problem. It has an advantage that it stays sharp for a long time. The disadvantage is that when it goes dull, you can't sharpen it. You can send it back and they'll either sharpen it or replace it for a small charge. But if you have a knife, you can keep it sharp all the time. So you have to sort of balance what works for you.
And they won't gouge.
No, it's safer to use. That's a good point, Jack. I'll talk a little bit when we use the knife about how not to gouge, but it is a safer deal. I recommend a little piece of glass. This is maybe 1 inch wide, 5 inches long, roughly, maybe 4.5. Be sure it's rounded, ground smooth on the corners and the edges so you don't hurt yourself. You'll see what that's for. I have a piece of plate glass with 2 grits of sandpaper fastened to it. I use spray adhesive. You spray some on the glass, you spray some on the sandpaper, and it's contact cement. I like to put little rubber feet on the bottom so it stays put. I also will use a piece of 220 paper, and this is 1000 grit, and you'll see what all this is for as we get to it. The first thing in our procedure is I believe you should break in your reeds. There are some people, very successful people, that will pick a reed for a concert tonight. I'm not one of those. Sort of a quickie break-in procedure is soak it. I like to use water. Some people soak it in their mouth with saliva. Try and see what works better for you. I like water, putting it in there 10, 15 seconds or so. I think the reed plays better, but you make up your own mind. Soak it, play it for a minute, put it on a piece of glass, rub it down a little bit, dry it off, and put it away. And the second day, 2 minutes, the next day 4 minutes, the next day 8 minutes, and so forth. That's our quickie break-in. What I personally use is the same: soak it, play it for 1 minute, put it back in the reed case, And I do that for 28 days, 4 weeks. Now, you have to be patient. You'll discover reeds will change. A reed that you think is no good after a week or two sometimes becomes a lot better. Sometimes a reed that you think, oh, this is probably going to be great. Sometimes it dies. That's what I like about that long-term method, is it gets so much of this changing done out of its system. So I'm definitely a believer in that. I wouldn't take a reed into a rehearsal even that hasn't done that first or that full month of break-in. Okay, the first thing, we'll need a reed for this. The first thing in evaluating a reed is the resistance. In the old days, I would just take a student's instrument here. Let me try that. We don't do that as much anymore, largely with COVID, and people are a little bit more germaphobe now than we used to be. But I have 2 little tests that you can easily do. First of all, to tell if the reed is too hard, play an open G, F, E, D, C really softly. And if the sound is clear like that, we know the reed is not hard. I'm faking this, but if it were hard, you'd get a lot of air. Okay? Now, to tell if the reed is soft, I'm going to start with the G on top of the staff, slur up stepwise to high D, pretty much as loud as I can. And if the reed is hard enough, if it's not too soft, then it will hold all my air. That easily holds the air. If it were soft, it would spread. So you can try that yourself if you want, but for students, that's a really good test. Obviously, if the reed is soft, you can clip it. But what do you do with a hard reed? Okay, I have a hard reed here. I tried it last night. I know it's hard. I'll give you a before picture here. It seems to have a little bit of promise, so it might be okay, but it's definitely too hard for me. I'm using good air. All right, first thing is sand the entire back of the reed flat. Not too aggressively, but just to make sure things are flat. About that much. Yes, that's making the tip slightly thinner. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Then I take a piece of my 220 paper and I will divide the reed into thirds. Back third, middle third, tip third. I'll sand the back third first. I'm sanding with the grain. Don't ever sand cross grain. And I am rotating the reed so that your sanding reflects the curvature of the reed in the back. Okay. Then in the center third, I will rotate my left hand a little bit while moving the sandpaper with the grain. And then on the tip third, I'm sanding it flat. I'm going to do that one more time. Back third, rounded. Middle third, slightly rounded. Tip third, flat. Now there's some reed dust there. I was fairly aggressive. This should be noticeably softer. It doesn't have to be perfect. It should be noticeably softer. If it's not noticeably softer, we're going to throw it away. That's still a little bit hard, but it's definitely noticeably better. So that reed I would now put back in the case, start breaking it in. Don't be afraid to do this on the very first day you try reeds. The reeds aren't, if you have a reed as hard as this one was, it's not going to get that much softer from breaking it in. So don't be shy about doing that. Okay, I have a series of I'll actually demonstrate them all on this reed first. I have a series of ways that I test reeds, and then depending on whether it passes or fails that test, I'll know what to do. First of all, I'm going to blow an open G forte, and I'm going to turn the clarinet sideways, but keep my head and my armature the same. I'm going to play here and here. Now that sounds pretty much the same, so that's good. Another test is I'm going to do the same thing side to side, but I'm going to play an overtone series. The first note is a low C. The next note I'm going to add the register key, making it G on top of the staff. Then, just with my voicing, I'm going to voice a high E and a high A above that. It should sound like, oh, and I'm not using my tongue. I'm doing air attacks like he, he. Right? Now I'll try it this side. It's pretty good on that top note. This is probably okay. I have one here that's going to fail that test that I'll demonstrate on. Another test is double lip overture. I play a low G pianissimo on each side. That's quite good. For that, we're going to be working on the back part of the reed, down here, what's called the shoulder on each side. So, let's get into that. I pre-selected a reed here that I believe is going to fail that first test with the open G side to side. It doesn't vibrate on the right side at all. I'm blowing exactly the same both ways. So, what we do is feel the reed with our index finger. I'm not going to bend it a whole lot. I'm just going to feel underneath, and I can tell when I do this, I don't know if the camera can get this or not, but it bends quite a ways up on the left side, and on the right side it bends much shorter. So we put the reed on this glass plaque, and using the reed knife, I'm going to gradually blend in. I'm going to start lower than where it's hard, and I'm going to blend that in and take some wood off on the right side. Now let's not worry about perfect right now. Is it better? We'll see. Pretty good. That's not a bad reed. I got lucky on that one. But be patient. Don't try and do everything all at once. But that certainly helped that reed. Now, remember that test we did with overblowing the notes. This one, last night anyway, failed that test. So I'll show you how we do this. This is pretty cool. I can't get the high note on either side. Sometimes you'll get the high note on one side and not the other. That's quite common. About half the time that'll happen. This one in particular fails both sides. So you put the reed on your piece of glass, and using your sandpaper, you're going to try to get close in here maybe. I'm going to put the sandpaper on the corner, press down a little bit, and do that. Maybe 5 or 6 times. And then the same thing on the other side. This is 220 sandpaper, so that's fairly aggressive. I'm not pressing down real hard. didn't do enough on the left side. Needs just a couple of more hits on the left to be good. I didn't do that as much as I did it the first time. The whole reed sounds better just because the left side was up. That's a lot better too. We're 2 for 2. All right, this next reed is one that almost kind of feels a little hard, a little stuffy, but it does pass that test. And I'll show you about that. It will do very softly, so I'm not going to do that overall sanding that I did. But when I play the reed, this doesn't really want to vibrate. It doesn't really sing. All right, this is where I'm going to do this test. I use a double lip embouchure, play a low G, air attack very softly. It won't get anything. Remember when I tried that on the first reed, I could easily get those low Gs out. All right, what we're going to do here is take wood off of both shoulders, here and here. Now you can use a knife, like this. You can use a reed Geek. It does the same thing. I like the knife because I'm used to it. And you can also see how much I'm taking off. We don't have to do a whole lot. There's nothing wrong with doing it a second time. There is something wrong with doing too much and ruining the reed. It's a little harder on the right, but both sides need a little bit more. So we'll do a little like 1, 2. I'll do a little bit more on this side. And you heard when I played the open G the first time, now the reed vibrates. That was a whole lot better. Okay, 3 for 3. Okay, people have asked me, especially when I go and do classes, is there a secret to making reeds or adjusting reeds? What really helps the most? And I say, yes, there is. And more important than those things that I showed you there is balancing the tip. Balancing the tip is a little bit more difficult. There's a little bit of a learning curve on this. Those first 3 things that I showed you, you could be 100% successful in your first attempt, unless you damage the reed somehow. It's a very cut or dry thing. This is more of a skill. It kind of plays, but it's thin and it's bright. Doesn't really work that well. Now, there's 2 different ways of doing this, and I'll demonstrate both of them. I'm taking my index finger and I'm very gently pressing down on the reed. And I can tell that over here on the right, it takes a little more effort to press it down. I've seen people bend that reed a lot. That's not good for the reed, and it's more difficult to tell. But this part right here is softer, bends more easily than it does over here. Another way to do this, especially if you don't feel like you have a real good sense of touch with your fingers, is take your thumbnail and hold this up to a light and go across this, and you can see how the reed bends. And I don't know if you can tell on the phone that Jack's recording this on, but right about there, it does not bend as freely as it does around the rest of the reed. So I'm going to take wood off right around in here. And that should do it. Now, this is a perfect opportunity to demonstrate the Reed Geek. It's got different cuts on it. There's a video on the Reed Geek company that'll show you how to use it. But if you're hesitant or tentative about using an implement on the tip of your reed, all you have to do is just kind of push it like this. Now you can wreck it, but
That's where the nut gouging part comes in handy.
that's exactly right. You're less likely to gouge it. I'll see if I did enough or not. Might be a little soft, but you can tell it's a fuller sound for sure. Let's see if I can feel that. I need just a little bit more. I did about 75%. If you use a knife, it's really important that you don't push the knife into the reed. You're trailing with the blade like this. I'm going to do just a little bit more, and I don't wreck the reeds because I'm trailing with the blade. You see what I mean by trailing with the blade like this? Not a cutting action, it's a scraping action. I hope you can tell on the video how much better that sounds. Can you hear that? Yeah. It actually, I balanced the tip and it gave the reed more resistance. It was kind of soft. You remember I made a comment, ooh, it's a little soft, maybe I have to clip it. I don't think I'd have to clip it now. And the reason is, before only part of that tip was vibrating, the other part was frozen, so this was overworking and the reed was soft. Now the whole reed is vibrating in harmony with itself. So I could go through and do those other tests on that reed and maybe improve it in other ways. 3 little tips. Number one, I already said this, but I can't emphasize it enough. Please be patient. I don't work on reeds for a concert tonight. Our concert tonight, I'm playing reeds that are roughly 2 months old. They've been broken in very carefully. They've had all this stuff done to them, and I know how they're going to play. Number two, I believe in identifying your reeds. Make some sort of a mark, a number, a letter, a name, a color, anything on the heel of the reed so you can identify it in the reed case without taking the reed out. And you can very easily keep track of your reeds that way. Oh, number 7 started out hard. It's getting a little better. Oh, it's a week old. It's getting pretty good. And you can kind of trace the progress of number 7 and see what happens. You will learn which reeds are good and not so good. You'll also learn a lot from that process by what happens to each reed. My third tip is don't spend 2 hours working on reeds. Your mind will fry, you'll lose patience, you'll start making mistakes. Do a little bit every day. If you're a serious player, you practice scales every day, you practice tonguing every day. Do a little bit of reed work every day. maybe just work on one reed, maybe 2 reeds, 5-10 minutes. But if you do it every day, it's good for the reeds, and it's really good for you that way. As I was going through, I was just thinking about, did I forget anything? And there's one thing I did forget. It's a pretty basic thing, but flatness of the back of the reed. It's important that the part of the reed that is over the mouthpiece here, that is on the flat side of the mouthpiece, that is flat. So if it's not flat, this one is pretty flat, but it will rock back and forth like this. This one's only doing it a tiny little bit. If it does that, take the back half of the reed, sand it over on the 220 part, and then sand the whole reed lightly. I'm hardly pressing down at all on the 600 paper. This is 600 paper, this is 220. When it's after the 600 paper, you should be able to hold it up to the light and see that the entire back of the reed has sort of a shine to it. And as this paper gets more worn, it's even better. Another thing I forgot, I mentioned this 1000 grit paper. This is a very, very small piece of 1000 grit paper. You've probably noticed when you clip a reed, sometimes it doesn't clip exactly straight, especially if the clipper is new to you or if you're sort of a beginning clipper person. It's really advantageous for the reed to be symmetrical and for the shape of the reed to fit the contour of your mouthpiece. Take this 1000 grit sandpaper, and using just the weight of the sandpaper, you can sand any part of the reed like that you want. It's obviously completely safe because I'm using no pressure. And say if the right hand side is a little bit high, then you can just do that. But that's what the 1000 grit paper is for. You can get this in an auto parts store or any place that they sell paint. You can just buy one sheet. So the other sandpaper, auto parts store, Lowe's, Home Depot. I use for the 220, I use sandpaper that's a little sharper, that is designed for sanding wood. This blue stuff is by Norton, and it's called wood sanding right on it. This 600 grit is the wet or dry sandpaper that's like for painting cars. So that's what I can think of.
What kind of percentage do you have with clipping reeds? When would you say it's beneficial to clip? When would you just say that the overall cane is too mushy and don't bother?
Well, I would give every reed a chance and clip it. But remember when we were doing the hard reed, and I said, if this isn't substantially better, I'm going to throw it away. Yeah. If I clip a reed and it's not substantially more resistance, I'm going to throw it away. Sometimes a reed is too soft because the cane is too mushy and doesn't have any springiness or resiliency to it, and a little clip is not going to fix that reed. So out it goes. But that's my test. Every soft reed deserves to be clipped at least once.
I've got a test about your overtone series test, and I think that test is safe with you because you understand how to voice your air, and you understand how to place a higher partial with the airstream. A lot of students don't know that, and they're accustomed to making high notes come out by biting. How do you keep students from going bite, chomp to get the high A?
I can definitely see how that could happen. I have found that almost every student can overblow the G and get the E. The A is sometimes a little bit more problematic. Probably some kind of a voicing lesson. Yeah. One thing I use is...
So this is maybe more just a warning to you kids out there, is that John's professional.
Okay, but you can try this and nobody's going to be injured with this or anything. I'm going to play a C, Then I'm going to go up to E by adding those two fingers. Then I'm going to pull those fingers off and get G. Then I'm going to put the fingers back on and get A. And I'm going to do that same he business. If you're not sure about the A, you can help it along by adding the C sharp key. I'm just raising my tongue for each one, voicing a little bit higher. If that doesn't seem to work, if you don't, quote, get it, play the high E, slur down the C. When you go down to the C, you'll feel something in your throat right here, dropping. If you don't drop that, you'll go up to a sharp G instead of getting C. If you leave this locked into place. Then if you leave it locked into place, it'll slur up to A.
These are all extremely fine points that we're talking about.
Right.
Because the problem I have with dropping your tongue to go from the E to the C is that so many students have the interlock when the tongue drops, the embouchure tightens. And if they know to do just enough to place it, it can work.
Right.
But the other way, you get either you get a really great Dixieland gliss,
Right.
or you get an A anyway.
Right.
You know,
Right. Okay.
or a G anyway.
All right.
So
here's how I would face that.
yeah.
I learned this in a master class given by the Pittsburgh Symphony principal horn Bill Caballero. Right.
Yeah.
And a student asked him, you're renowned for your accuracy. This guy never, ever misses. What can you tell us to help with accuracy? And he was saying that most horn players chip notes because they're not playing in the center of the note. They're playing on the
looking for resistance.
On the top part of the note. Okay. High C is a great note for that. Find the bullseye where high C sounds the best and feels the best. If you've ever played a sport with a bat or a racket that contacts a ball, you know what I mean by the sweet spot, whether it's golf or tennis or baseball, where you hit that ball and you hardly even feel it. There's a sweet spot for that C. And if I go too high, then it gets pinchy.
It leans out.
Right, it gets thin and pinchy. That place where that note is large and round, that's the center of that note. So I would tell a student to find the center of the C, then find the center of the E, and they're almost identical places.
Right. Yeah. And then the what I would say is find where the C is while you're playing the E.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The kind of tabby toe thing.
Right. And then a little bit of a small step up, and you can get that sharp G by fingering the C.
Yeah.
So you can sort of go either way there.
Yeah, almost like whistling, like a little whistling harmonics.
Right.
Just a little bit of change, and you get that bump up. So we were talking in the car, and John's here for the week, playing our subscription concert. And on the way home, we were talking about something that I've kind of got in the works, which is basically how not to squeak. That's the blunt end of it. But I'm thinking about the systems of clarinet playing, or just making a clarinet tone, and the system that is not you, the reed, the mouthpiece, the instrument is a system. Mm-hmm. All the different parts of that have to work together, and then there is your air, how you support it, how you focus it, how you voice it with your oral cavity, that's another system. And then your embouchure and your face and your jaw muscles, your individual physiology and how your muscles in your face work and how that system works to provide support for the vibrating reed and how it also provides resistance. That's another system. And all of those three things are interrelated. And without getting too far ahead of us, that we talk about reeds and we stress about reeds, and we're all, well, not all of us. There's a story a friend of mine told me about going to a festival where Paul Meyer was playing, and he said he was involved in the festival. He was backstage, and Meyer opened his clarinet case and put his clarinet together in like 5 or 6 Van Doren reeds in their wraps fell out. And he said Meyer took one, unwrapped it, put it on, went out and played a recital.
Right.
Right. So that's one end of the spectrum. Most of us spend, the clarinetists I admire most, Robert Marseilles, Harold Wright, all spent a lot of time and a lot of money on mouthpieces and reeds. But they all sounded exactly like themselves on whatever they played. So there's this thing about that just the reed as part of the system. And the point I guess I wanted to make is that there's no such thing as a good reed except as it relates to a mouthpiece and an instrument.
Absolutely.
Just as there's no good mouthpiece except as it relates to the reed and to the instrument.
Right. Right.
So what would be some different things you might do for players who play on, let's say, a much more closed facing or a much more open facing?
These procedures that I did here, I would do exactly the same. It's just a matter of reed selection, and I wouldn't even get too involved with the numbers. If you're trying some, say, number 3.5 reeds, and they're soft, just go to 4s or 4.5s.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't want to sound too oversimplified, but all this reed procedure that I did is exactly the same for open mouthpieces, closed mouthpieces, hard reeds, soft reeds, and so forth. It'll work the same for all of them.
I guess also another point is be prepared for it to change with the seasons.
Oh my goodness, yes. This is where this reed case, though, with the humidipack in it, lessens that a lot. But if it were going to rain hard this afternoon, our reeds would likely be a little bit stuffy tonight. They would still play, but it would be a little bit different. So
I started out making reeds by hand in college at the Stubbins book, Art of Clarinetistry, where he's got like the whole chapter on making reeds by hand, and I made reeds by hand. Then when I went to Greeley and started studying with Bill, I got a reed dual. And we ought to mention that you are now the sole purveyor of the reed dual reed machine.
Right. Back in 2016, I bought the company, and my website is called Precision Reed Products, and you go there and you can see all about the reed machine and order one if you're interested. You can contact me for questions. There's a really good video that a friend of mine made, shows how to use it. I've been...
We'll make sure to link that.
I've been making my own reeds exclusively since about 1977, I'd say. I used Moray reeds when I studied with Marcellus, but he let me change over as long as they were good. But everything I showed you is exactly the same thing I do with homemade reeds too.
Yeah. Well, I thought I should, and if I were a really good friend, we'd have a reed dual here, make this a real worthwhile.
That would be a 2-hour video.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you can think of?
I think I have my list here, but I think I hit all the major points. Be patient. Don't be in a hurry, and try to have a good attitude about it. Like anything else, if you hate reeds, if you despise doing this, then you probably won't be very good at it. One other little point, the business about the balancing the tip, the thing we did at the end, save your old dead reeds, don't throw them away. And get your reed geek and get your knife and practice taking wood off in different places. Learn how, by making mistakes, learn how to take wood off the tip of a reed without wrecking it. So when you get the good reed that you don't want to do it, like the young surgeons practice on cadavers.
Well, one of my early teachers said, work on reeds. And I said, what do you mean? What do you do? He said, I don't know. He said, just try stuff. All you got to lose is a reed that doesn't play anyway.
Get your money back on that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a million, John.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure.
Always
we always geek out when we get together. This is like real life.
Yeah. All right. Go get them.
Thank you.